Coming up next on CBS 4 News at 5, a crucial all-day meeting between the South Florida family of Elian Gonzalez and immigration officials. We're live with the latest.
The lawyer for Elian's father says he's applied for a visa to come to the United States to get his son. This side of the story developing in Washington, D.C. and Cuba. We'll have live reports for you from both locations.
A truck rollover shuts down the northbound side of I-95 for hours, crippling the evening rush. We'll have a live update.
A South Florida girl recovering tonight in the hospital after a day at the Miami-Dade County Fair. She's telling us her frightening story.
In health news, a controversial study about your fingers and your sexual orientation.
And we're talking one-on-one about Jimmy Smits and his new movie role. Good evening, I'm Angela Ray.
I'm Steve Wolford, CBS 4 News at 5, right here, right now.
Now, live. This is CBS 4 News First at 5.
7.5 hours, and they're still behind closed doors. Elian Gonzalez' South Florida family and immigration officials are meeting to decide his fate.
This is happening as Elian's father in Cuba pushes forward with plans to come to this country. The attorney for Elian's father says he's filed applications for a visa to bring him here so he can regain custody of the little boy.
It's been another tense day in the fight for Elian. We have live team coverage from South Florida and Washington, D.C. to Havana, Cuba.
Let's begin with Gary Nelson live outside the Federal Justice Building in downtown Miami. Gary.
Well, Angela, attorneys for Elian's family here in Miami and the Justice Department have now negotiated for 12 long hours over 2 days. They are trying to avoid a confrontational crisis over the issue of this boy's custody. They have reached no agreement so far. The Miami INS director and attorneys for the government arrived for the resumed talks today 15 minutes early. 15 minutes late came attorneys for Elian's South Florida family. Both sides looking to talk, but neither apparently willing to yield. 6 hours into today's talks in the Miami Federal Court building, Maris Gonzalez, Elian's cousin and surrogate mother figure, here arrived, her brow furrowed, a worried look. Family spokesman Armando Gutierrez had dropped her off.
Here's Maris Lacey's here. What is her role in this?
Well, she's a very important person in this, and she needs to know what's happening.
When reporters asked if the negotiations were failing, Gutierrez, agitated, lashed out at Gregory Craig, a former attorney for the president, now representing Elian's father in Cuba. Gutierrez accused Craig of trying to sabotage the talks.
The family is negotiating in good faith, and Clinton's lawyer, which has a direct line to Bill Clinton, is already saying that the negotiations failed.
The only indication of how things might be going in talks over the future of this little boy came from the family here in Miami today, and the indications were not good. And the talks continue. We'll continue to monitor them as yet another government deadline looms for revoking little Elian's immigration status. We're live in Miami. Gary Nelson, CBS 4 News.
From downtown Miami to Washington, D.C., the fight for Elian is also taking center stage in our nation's capital.
CBS 4's Ted Scouten is joining us live in Washington, D.C. with more on that. Ted.
Steve, the big development today here in Washington regards Elian's father. As we were saying, today his attorney officially filed for visas for both Elian's father and his immediate family to come here to the United States. The flurry of activity began in the morning when officials from the Cuban Interest Section met with the State Department to let them know Elian's father, Juan Miguel Gonzalez, is prepared to come to the U.S.
in a way to help to find a positive solution.
Later, Juan Miguel's attorney officially requested visas for Elian's family, but with a condition. The child must be allowed to stay with the father during the appeal of his case.
He has been ready, willing, and waiting for too many weeks, too many months. He needs only to be told that when he comes here, he will in fact be given custody of his son.
If Juan Miguel is granted custody, he says he will ask for a delegation of 31 people to be allowed into the U.S., including friends of Elian, teachers, and doctors. But the State Department says they'll have to go through normal channels to get their visas.
First of all, that the Department of State and the U.S. government generally does not make any concessions based on pressures, demands, or threats from the government of Cuba. If any individuals wish to request visas to travel to the United States, the department will consider such applications on a case-by-case basis.
Juan Miguel's attorney says the father is the only one who speaks for Elian, not the South Florida relatives and not their lawyers. and he criticized the way that the Miami family allows Elian to be in the spotlight.
And the decision just last night to parade Elian in front of demonstrators on the streets of Miami. These decisions make clear that Elian's best interests lie with his father.
Meanwhile, Attorney General Janet Reno, who supports Elian's return to his father, said the volatile nature of this whole case and the high tension in Miami is very disturbing.
It is a community I was born in, raised in. It's a community I love, and when it's hurting, it hurts me.
Also today, Vice President and presidential candidate Al Gore came out in support of Elian and his entire family being granted permanent U.S. residency. That issue right now is in front of the U.S. Senate. We're live in Washington. I'm Ted Scout in CBS 4 News.
All right, from Washington, D.C., let's get the latest on the protest and reaction from the family in Little Havana.
CBS 4's Julie Auclair is live outside Elian's home to continue our team coverage. Julie.
Well, Angela, while the family had very little to say today, supporters have been very vocal here outside Elian's home as they practice forming a human chain to protect the little boy in case the INS tries to snatch him away and return him to Cuba. Elian supporters cheer and call out his name as he waves to the crowd. Grinning and joking with his uncle Lazaro, Elian seems like a typical 6-year-old, if only for a moment. Then he's quickly ushered back inside. Relatives concerned he'll be snatched away, returned to Cuba. Meantime, Elian's supporters practice forming a human chain so that they can protect the house and the boy in case INS officials come to take him away.
And if we have to be arrested, we have to be arrested.
Family spokesperson Armando Gutierrez making a brief statement after learning the attorney for Juan Miguel Gonzalez, Greg Craig, is requesting visas for the family, claiming negotiations have fallen apart.
We're really upset, and we really wonder if the U.S. government is negotiating in good faith.
Throughout the day, more and more supporters gathering, one woman fainting from the heat but refusing medical attention before being escorted into the house by Lazaro Gonzalez.
I don't think that God saved that little boy from those waters just to have him sent back. I think that he will put his hand over that boy again and that he will come through.
And the supporters say they will stay here as long as it takes, many going as far as to say they are willing to die to protect Elian's civil rights. Right now they are just waiting for word from the family as to what happens next. We're live in Little Havana. Julie Auclair, CBS 4 News.
From the protesters to Miami-Dade Mayor Alex Pinellas, who is now defending his words in the fight for Elian.
CBS 4's Evan Bacon is live in Little Havana with more on the community concerns. Evan.
Flagler and 27th for recent protests involving Elian. Tonight, there is a release out from the Democracy Movement telling the community to remain in full alert but calm until Friday morning. That is tomorrow morning, the present deadline for revoking Elian's parole. Protest organizers tell CBS 4 they're ready to mobilize if the government revokes Elian's parole while his case is still in court.
Then there will be massive protest in the direction of civil disobedience, I think in the airport, Port of Miami, and perhaps downtown Miami.
Last January, hundreds of demonstrators blocked the entrance to the Port of Miami, snarling traffic for hours. Some 50 people arrested. Later that night, blood and tear gas at a sit-in in West Miami-Dade.
Our police officers will respond appropriately.
Miami-Dade's mayor says the county is prepared to restore public order once again, but that cooperation goes only so far.
We will not utilize our resources to help INS go into the boy's home and snatch the boy in what we believe is an inappropriate act. That is a federal government responsibility.
A task that Attorney General Janet Reno stands ready to move on.
I think in this great country, which is operated on principles of federalism, the government in Miami will continue to uphold the law and to work with other law enforcement to see that the law is honored the right way.
And tonight it appears Mayor Pinellas is backing off those harsh words he had for the president and for Janet Reno yesterday, telling them they would be responsible for provoking violence. Tonight, he says his fear is that extremists will try to capture the limelight and make a statement for themselves. We're live in Little Havana. Evan Bacon, CBS 4 News.
South Florida's own Gloria Stefan is weighing in on the fight for Elian. The popular performer wanted to voice her opinion with Janet Reno herself, so she just picked up the phone and gave the Attorney General a call. And while she did not release details of their conversation, she did release this statement. She says, quoting now, "It is alarming to think that in refusing Elian his day in court, the full truth in his situation may never be heard. We urge our government to grant Elian the opportunity to present his case without extraordinary and uncommon conditions," end quote.
We want to know what you think about the latest developments in the Elian Gonzalez custody fight. Give us a call on our CBS 4 News viewer comment line at 305-639-4669. We'll air some of your remarks coming up on CBS 4 News at 5:30.
And we have more on the fight for Elian in this half hour. Coming up in about 5 minutes, we'll take you live to Havana for the very latest on how folks in Cuba are reacting to the latest developments in South Florida and in Washington, D.C.
A rollover wreck causes some big problems on I-95 tonight. Take a look at the mess. A tanker truck overturned on the highway, shutting down the northbound lanes for hours. 6 people were hurt.
It happened in the northbound lanes of I-95 just north of 595 in Dania Beach. Traffic was forced to exit at Griffin Road. CBS 4's Jack Hambrick live on the scene now with more for us. Jack.
Angela, the traffic has been terrible out here all day long, but about 5 minutes ago the I was reopened, the northbound lanes, and you can see some of the cars slowly making their way northbound. Let's go to a shot from Chopper 4 just a little bit south, and you can see some of the traffic still slow moving, but it's backed up all the way down into Dade County, all the way down to Ives Dairy Road, and the afternoon rush certainly isn't helping things. Traffic on the I can be brutal, but rarely is it this bad. A pileup involving a diesel tanker closes the northbound lanes near the airport for nearly 5 hours. The wreck also involves an ambulance and 2 cars.
Preliminary findings that a van supposedly cut him off, thereby causing him to lose control, rolled the tanker over on I-95. An ambulance and 2 additional vehicles struck the tanker as it was overturned.
4 people were taken to the hospital and treated for minor injuries. There was no patient in the back of the ambulance. While the tanker was empty, firefighters were concerned about the fumes inside of the tanker. They sprayed down the interstate with foam to ensure that neither the midday heat or a spark would ignite the fumes and turn this accident into a true disaster.
They've put a foam blanket down to hold the heat down, to hold vapors away, and they've also got some charged hose lines out.
Traffic was forced off at Griffin Road. As the hours passed, drivers began to lose patience.
You got 120,000 cars on 95 trying to exit. You got about 20 cars crossing Sheridan underneath 95, but every going to be up on the scene of the accident to be a hero.
It's ruining my day, definitely. Trying to get somewhere, take care of business.
And once again, the interstate is now open, but if you want to avoid some of the residual traffic, you may want to try 75, the Turnpike, US 1, or 441. Live in Dania Beach, Jack Hambrick, CBS 4 News.
A cabin cruiser goes up in flames today in the waters of Biscayne Bay. Chopper 4 over the scene near Elliott Key as National Park Service crews work to put that fire out. 2 people on board were able to make it to another boat before the cabin cruiser was completely engulfed in flames. No word on how it started.
Out of all of the lotto tickets sold for last night's $81.6 million drawing, only 1 person is holding the winning ticket tonight. It was sold in the Pasco County town of Holiday, which is 15 miles northwest of Tampa. Tonight, that winner has a difficult choice. Take $2.7 million a year for 30 years or take a lump sum payment of just shy of $39 million. The jackpot for this Saturday's drawing is now back down to chump change, only $5 million.
Mere chump change. We are continuing to follow the big story of the day, developments in the Elian Gonzalez case. You're looking at a live picture now of the Federal Justice Building. Elian's attorneys and INS officials are still meeting. It's been 7 hours now. We'll take you live once the meeting wraps up.
Also coming up, could your fingers hold the key to your sexual orientation? The answer might surprise you.
A monster water sprout like South Florida almost never sees, and it's caught on camera. We'll show you where.
You're watching CBS 4 News with Angela Ray, Steve Wolford, meteorologist Brian Norcross, and Jim Berry Sports.